All right. My best friend Madhuri and myself, Ron, we are here to talk about cloud native artificial intelligence. If you want this presentation, it'll probably be sent out later. Yeah, there's the QR code now if you want it. Okay, we are in noir mode. Second thank you, of course, is to the Computer History Museum. Please join, become a member. We have a new president, Mark, who is around. Hopefully we'll get to meet him for the first time today. But please enjoy the museum and please support them. We love it here, and thanks for hosting us. All right, so this topic is something that we've been involved with for a fair bit of time. What we hope to convey is kind of a perspective of what's been going on in the cloud native world on the inside, and that pretty much means the CNCF. And then the outside, maybe beyond the CNCF, what's going on with AI and cloud native and the combination of these things. This is my color palette. Since we went with the noir look, I had to add some color according to my wife, so we chose this, and so you'll see these colors throughout this event. So this information and a lot of the projects that we're talking about comes from people in this room. I would never point at Deep and embarrass him here in the front, but Deep is a great contributor to a lot of these efforts we're about to see. There's other members floating around here, so if anyone has questions about these projects or papers, please just find us, and we're happy to talk more about them. Additionally, we work with other groups, not just in the CNCF, but close and dear to our heart, like the Linux Foundation and beyond. Okay, so I am going to report in on the perspective from what used to be called the CNCF AI Working Group. Recently has been kind of refocused and renamed to the TOC AI Initiative. We mainly hang out on Slack, so you can always come and talk to us. So what do we do? Probably a little hard to read here, but so far we have been working on a lot of writing. So initially it was kind of a boil the ocean, what kind of projects are going out there, what are people doing with AI, how are they using AI? We'll see a better listing of what that functionality looks like in just a moment. So doing these papers, it comes with a lot of people's experience. We're always looking for volunteers to come add to these things, from the actual content all the way through editing, things like that. Additional kinds of reports that we're working on are down here, a little hard to see. We're trying to work on kind of like little radars so you can kind of see the progression of what AI is doing to the cloud native space. All right, so a lot of the kind of back research is being done by the members of the TOC AI Initiative and beyond. So we do need your time, your talent, and your treasure. So just as an example, here's some screenshots of some secret documents that are currently being worked on. One is around agentic standards and kind of that onion of things that we're adding on to an AI system to make it operate in a cloud native way. So that paper is in its final editing phase and should be hopefully coming out soon. Another one is around security, which Deep here is taking the lead on. Same kind of position, we're nearing the end. A little bit of a sneak preview on kind of the things you may expect to see in this paper. Of course, much more elaboration on what does this have to do with managing AI and keeping it secure. So again, both these papers will be out very soon. All right, so what's going on in the cloud native AI world? So this is, we'll call this my artistic reinvention of a dashboard that the CNCF already produces, showing the different maturity levels of the projects. So the main one you can see here is the sandbox level projects. We had some kind of event here in mid-2020. So what's going on here, and ultimately what does this have to do with artificial intelligence? So as you can see here, there's some grayed out bullets. The sandbox process to become a sandbox program became a little more formal, a little bit easier to join, which is probably one of the main reasons for the uptick in sandbox projects. Additionally, we were trapped at home because of COVID. Maybe not so obvious is Kubernetes itself had a few releases in this period of time that actually allows us to do more interesting things around training of models, pipelines, things like that. So that was an interesting time. If you go back, you can see all the release notes that happened there. And along the way, you can kind of see I just tried to highlight some additional things related to machine learning in AI. Of course, we got Kubernetes in the beginning. And right here, it looks like ChatGPT came along. And at first, there wasn't a huge impact right away. And one could actually argue that it hasn't had that much of an impact, right? But I think the devil is in the details. So for those who don't track all the projects of the CNCF, a lot of them were built or being built before ChatGPT even showed up. So it's no surprise, if you're looking, that it didn't have some kind of course correction here on a lot of the projects. Some of the projects are also very big, so it's even harder to integrate potentially some aspects of AI. Now, it doesn't mean that some of these weren't related to AI. It just means some of these larger events not necessarily had the impact that you may have thought thinking through the history. Okay, so what is going on with AI? So this is a little hard to see. There's a visualization coming up here in a moment. What this is capturing is, you can see up here in the legend, there's the non-CNCF projects, but still cloud native. Then there's the sandbox, the incubating, and the graduated. And what this is trying to do, what most recently kind of walking back up to the point of ChatGPT is, what kind of AI features or aspects of AI are these projects using over time? And so initially what you see here is this consuming, producing, development, enables. And what this means is this. Consuming at its basic is kind of how we're labeling projects that use AI as a core feature, right? So one that comes to mind in the CNCF stable is KCD, right? It has a feature, uses LLM to do it. Without it, doesn't have that feature, right? It's part of KCD. Another form of consuming would be through some kind of plugin or an extension, right? So we can add some kind of way indirectly that a system is using AI. Producing, this is more of your traditional, we build models, that type of thing, right? Development is the actual, referring to the coding procedures. So I use it to do PR management, I use it to write code, right? Those kinds of things. And then the enablement section are software that's known to build AI along the way, but they themselves are not anything geared towards AI, right? So one that comes to mind immediately was Kubernetes. It depends on who you ask, but in general terms, it wasn't built to make models, right, originally, right? But now it largely can handle it, no problem. So over time, we can see these categories, and again, each of these represents the maturity levels, and then of course the non-CNCF projects. Now take it with a grain of salt. I would argue the most interesting thing I may have found doing this was the AI washing of people's repositories, right? The marketing team wants you to mention AI things and you haven't done anything with AI. Turns out even post-dated blogs are now mentioning AI. So it's a little hard to actually authoritatively know who's doing AI and when. But by looking at hundreds of different projects, this is kind of the trend, and that's the more important part, is the trend. And I think that's pretty accurate. So another way to think about this is you have not missed the boat. So a lot of people get hung up trying to learn AI, right? It's complicated, costs a lot of money. You feel like by the time you learn it all or build your own model, you just run out of resources, right? I would actually beg to differ that by using other people's systems, we can inject AI into a lot of different tools and platforms. So in no way, shape, or form do I think we've missed the boat. In fact, if you're not building those large-scale tools producing, you're more likely consuming or using it in development. And just by the numbers, it shows there's plenty of room to add more AI-like features across the board. And I'm not saying we need to. It's just I'm just trying to inspire that there's still time and room to do that. Again, this doesn't break it down by, like, for example, again, in consuming, one dimension of breaking that down is core feature versus some kind of plugin extension, right? You can imagine all systems are Turing complete, basically, so we can add AI to anything, right? that's a different story than something that was purpose-built using AI. So again, that's another way of breaking all these things down, of which I would actually like, if anyone would want to talk about how we break these things down and report them, please come talk to me. We're always looking to improve these kinds of things on how we model what's going on in the world around us. Okay. Another kind of visualization of what's been going on is the kind of influence on the tool's purposes and the techniques that they're doing. So what this is trying to show is if you kind of go on the vertical there, you can see there's just kind of infrastructure management, and there we got Kubernetes. And then we have the kind of frameworks that manage the building and positioning of AI systems. Below that, of course, we have LLMs. And then, of course, through the power of what we came across with ChatGPT, we have agentic rage going on now. So this is just trying to capture over time when different projects come out. This isn't meant to say these are all the most important or the key, even the key relations, but hopefully you can start to see kind of the trend went from just kind of basic building complex systems. Kubernetes was not the first distributed computing system in the world. There's been plenty of that going on for decades, but it did definitely make a lot of things easier. And then of course the scheduling and diagramming systems on top of that. And then of course we got techniques in AI like RAG and whatnot. And again, the agentic explosion. And now we can already see here at the bitter end, I'd like to thank Josh Halley, who's in Germany right now, for making sure I did not forget to add the gateway, because ultimately with agentics, we're gonna have all this networking going on, and we have to be able to manage it, control it. So again, this is kind of what's going on. And if you look at the whole trend, if I was a business owner, I would take this and be like, all right, where's the gaps here, if any? This is the year of platform engineering. I think looking at all the things that we have looked at, I think if people consider the abilities of agents and what we have, can we start at the beginning again and kind of maybe do a better job across managing infrastructure, managing the things we build on things like Kubernetes? I think there's plenty of things to review. So again, this is just showing us how we got somewhere, but I think it's worth going backwards as well. So how are people using AI as far as their projects are concerned? Well, one thing we've been seeing is, of course, issue reporting. People now think they're all part of the Hackers 95 movie, right? Releasing all these instantaneous bug reports, which by the way was the 30th anniversary this week, so good movie. So we do see it there. There's PR resolution. The Wasm Edge is probably one of the earlier examples of using that. So they've been doing some kind of modeling there for a couple of years at this point. Lots of people are using bots now, so that's an area that can be improved upon just due to the number of people doing it. Coding assistants, of course, are being seen. That leads us to probably something of more urgency is the policy management. So what is projects doing regarding the use of AI? We'll see in a moment. Basically, it is encouraged to the point of it's okay to do it. What's not okay to do it is to just take claim for it, right? Just be like, yeah, I did it all, right? Because then if you don't actually understand the code you did, how are someone gonna come to you and fix it and do things like that? So again, still pretty early days, but you can see there are projects, OpenTelemetry. The Linux Foundation itself has a statement on this we'll see in a moment. So again, there are things happening in repos that you can see. And then of course, maybe the last part here is research. This is actually giving people a lot of good ideas. So you dump your repo, let AI go at it, and you're like, hey, what does this thing do? And it tells you the 3 things it does, gets one of them wrong. And then you're like, okay, give me 2 more ideas of what this thing could do. And next thing you know, you actually start to see other ways to connect tools. And that's actually pretty cool. So it is being used by projects to do research on what they should do next. Okay, if you get these notes in the comments, or in the speaker notes, there's links to a lot of these things. Okay. So what would we look for when we do these kinds of reports? And again, these are always a work in progress. So I'll just tell you my experience most recently. One is just manually. Again, this is where I came across people doing AI washing, where you see a blog post from 2001 that says, yeah, we're doing AI. And I'm like, okay. Another thing is how do we classify them as consumers, producers, things like that? We look for third-party libraries, right? We look for LangChain and things like that. Where different libraries are being used can give us a hint on whether or not you're doing something with AI. And then, of course, there's the infrastructure around it, right? What does it take to deploy products and things like that? So again, same kind of thing. We're always trying to find ways to automate that research. It's hard to keep up with thousands of projects, and this is just my part-time pro bono job. So it's a lot to do, and we're trying to automate that research as well. So if you enjoy doing those kinds of things, we'd love to have you join us. Okay, again, it's just showing where we look for things. Kudos to the landscape team. It's kind of where I always try to focus on initially as the start. All right, just a couple of projects. We're not explaining in detail what these things are, but I did talk to the main maintainers of these projects in regards to AI, and in the world of AI, what are these projects up to? And so Kubeflow, for those who don't know Kubeflow, we'll just call it a distributed training system. It's much more, but we'll just go with that. It's applied for graduation. So again, this is just showing you that some of the tools here are maturing. Kubeflow's been around quite a while compared to most things, and that's actually a very good sign that it's growing in use and stability, maturity, features. Other things to mention, there's work with other organizations like the PyTorch ecosystem, the Apache ecosystem as well. These are good indicators that there's a larger interest in CN AI products, I think, as a signal. Then, of course, with all the agentic things going on, Kubeflow is not to be left behind either. Here's a visualization of Kubeflow for those who don't see it very often. Again, we live in Kubeflow's world. Thank you, Andre. I believe you're in London. Thank you, thank you. Project that I'm near and dear to is KCGPT. This is SRE in a box. The idea is can you scrape the problems of Kubernetes, send it to an LLM, get some kind of guidance, and then, of course, auto remediate would be the real end game here. And so talk to Alex, who manages this project, about what some challenges they had and success. You can see here just making sure that the tool does what it's supposed to do, right? We don't want it to just fix things incorrectly, right? So there's a lot of work there. Some of the kind of latest features, again, is auto remediation. This is where it will not only tell you what's wrong, it will actually go fix it. Again, there's other projects out there. Parity is one. There's additional ones as well. So a lot of work is being done in that space, including at the CNCF. If you've never seen it, this is what it looks like in a nutshell. Try to color code a little bit. In the top left, submit a pod that will break because the image doesn't exist. Use KCGPT to analyze the system. It says there's a broken pod. It gives us the standard events message from Kubernetes. Then we pass that to an LLM, in this case OpenAI, and you can see it just gives us this generic solution. If you try again here in interactive mode, you can actually ask it for more details. In this case, here in the middle, I say, give me the kubectl command to actually fix it, and there it is. And now this was not auto. This was just showing you that you can work with the system as a proxy. And again, it's connecting the streams of issues from Kubernetes and sending it to an LLM and managing that process. Okay. All right, Kagent is probably the hot kid on the block here. So this is an agent framework. And so they've kind of taken that next step of combining all the tools, right, that could be connected, through things like MCP. So they've built on top of a framework called ADK. So again, it's just good to recognize that these projects do their own homework, they do research, and they do consider good purpose-built solutions along the way. Just a little quick visualization if you haven't seen it. It's more than this, but what we can see here is 3 agents have been registered on the left. And then here we are asking what Helm charts are in my cluster, and then you pick which agent you want to use for that. And then you can see here it's analyzing the output of Kubernetes, adding some commentary and some structure around it. Okay, last one, open telemetry. For those who don't know, this is kind of a telemetry standard in the CNCF and beyond world. A lot of words here. What I'll just kind of jump to is there are instrumentation in the Python library now to handle things like tokens, time to tokens, things like that. So there is active work going on for generative AI in OpenTelemetry. So please check out the progress there. And it does work. Trust me, if you go do the hello world examples, you will see it talking to an LLM and tracing it. It's very cool. Okay, last report from our fearless CTO, Chris Anichek. This report, if you have not seen it, is kind of a general what's going on with the project's mid-year point. I took the top 6 of the top 30 to just add a little bit of commentary on what do they got to do with AI. Again, Kubernetes has now gone from device plugins to DRA. Thanks, Ben the Elder, if he is here. Not only does he correct me a lot on pull requests, he did mention this morning DRA, and I forgot to put it on there, so I just added it on there. And of course, thanks for containers and Docker. OpenTelemetry, of course, is instrumenting Gen AI. There's plugins for RAG and MCP and Backstage. We've got additional plugins, of course, in variants of Flux and Argo. Crossplane, at this point, I would argue is more of just an integrator. I wouldn't say there's anything specific yet directly to AI. I could be wrong, but from what I could tell and who I talked to, that doesn't seem to be the case. And then Kubeflow, of course, has already been the standard for making this stuff for a long time. Okay. If you want to know more about AI, there's lots of stuff, obviously, in Silicon Valley, and lots of groups and lots of events. Please look around. KCD SF is a great place to be, and San Francisco is a great place to be. There is a lot going on in this space, so please come out and see us around town. Okay, last slide for me. You can read this again. There's a link in the notes. This is a note from the Linux Foundation on the use of AI. So there isn't a kind of official statement out there, so do take a moment and read that. And not to be outdone, but the Linux Foundation Data and AI group has plenty of their own projects, the PyTorch Foundation. Please check out all their good work as well. And with that, I'd like to go beyond the CNCF with Madhuri, who will take us to Mars. All right.
Thanks, Rod. That was a cool overview of all the active projects within the CNCF ecosystem, but there are a ton of active projects outside of CNCF ecosystem that are also powering the training, serving, and batch workloads. All the non-CNCF projects are also running on top of Kubernetes, so they are working with the CNCF projects to power the training, serving, and batch workloads. So let's see a quick demo to see how these projects work together. So in this demo, what we are trying to see is, let me get this out. We'll try to look at this demo from the point of view of an enterprise user who works in Team A. This enterprise user has access to on-premise data center that is running Kubernetes using OpenShift. There are a lot of excess spare capacity available to this enterprise user, and this enterprise user also has inherited a lot of Confluence articles and a lot of Slack messages that they have to sift through to find answers on a day-to-day basis. So the enterprise user has an idea saying, hey, why don't I use an LLM using the spare capacity to text summarize these articles that I have at my disposal, and I'm spending hours on a daily basis trying to manually summarize these articles that I have. So this enterprise user starts to deploy a text summarizer LLM. He already has access to Kubernetes, so the text summarizer LLM is deployed on the OpenShift cluster. If you look under the hood, the text summarizer LLM is running by an AI framework called Ray, which is not a CNCF project, but it's deployed on Kubernetes using KubeRay. And he's very happy with the text summarizer LLM, and he tries to sell it to his coworkers. And his coworkers ask him, hey, what is going on with this text summarizer LLM? How is it running on my Kubernetes cluster? So he shows them he looks at the admin dashboard for the OpenShift cluster, and he sees that the text summarizer LLM is running by Ray. Ray is simply running as pods on your Kubernetes cluster, so you can manage, monitor, and you can inspect the Ray pods using headlamp, which they're used to using already. So they look at the serving namespace and they see that it's running as a default pod, so they're very happy. So when they get to selling the workload to the wider team members are really happy, but they say that, hey, if all of us want to start using your text summarizer LLM, we are not going to be able to be served by these measly little 2 pods, right? So we want a larger number of pods to support our text summarizer LLM. So they want to deploy 16 pods, but they're out of capacity for GPU on their on-premise data center, and they have some free credits on Azure. So they need a multi-cluster fleet manager that will schedule the text summarizer LLM on Ray across on-prem OpenShift and Azure. And in addition to that, the Ray pods need to be able to communicate with each other across on-premise data center and Azure. So they use a fleet manager like Nova that's going to schedule the Ray pods across on-premise and data center, on-premise data center and Azure. And they use a multi-cluster networking solution like Cilium Cluster Mesh to connect the Ray pods across the 2 Kubernetes clusters. So now they go ahead and deploy Cilium Cluster Mesh to connect the 2 clusters on on-prem and public cloud, and they use Nova to schedule the 16 Ray pods. And they'll go and run a load test to summarize all the Wikipedia articles, and all the Wikipedia articles are summarized successfully. In order to publish this demo setup to production, they need some kind of observability for making sure that the stack is enterprise ready. So they use Cilium Hub to make sure that their networking traffic is monitored. So that way you have an enterprise ready stack and their boss is happy and they're going to save their time with respect to manually going through these materials. We are out of time, so I'm going to skip through the rest of this demo and point you to a repo where you can download an open source stack where you can run a copy of this demo yourself. And if you have any questions, please talk to us after the talk. And the key takeaways is AI is running on Kubernetes. It's an exciting time for all of us that are working within the CNCF and outside CNCF ecosystem to support AI workloads on top of Kubernetes. Thank you so much.